That's right. You bet we're live. I'm going to play our rock and roll music right now. I absolutely love it. You love it. Am I right, everybody? Yeah, that's right. Orange and Blue today. It's presented by Sean Honda. It is Cecil, Lammey. It is Andrew Mason. And Mace, it's only been a couple of times as we're back on StreamYard. Shout out StreamYard. But every time I turn on that rock and roll music, I see your face smile. And that a smiling Andrew Mason makes me smile, my friend.
Well, ditto for you, my friend. You know, the smile that I had on my face there was thinking, how did we settle on this music? And I mean, I know it's from a production library,
Right.
but like you can go into production libraries and you can find music that actually means something to football fans. Like I'll just give you an example. The music that's been used on NFL primetime over the decades. That's generally production library music that if you wanted to get for a very small fee, because you can just get a production library to track for like what the rights to it for like what $5, something like that.
Sometimes, yeah.
They're pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering why we didn't kind of go through one of the libraries and get something like that. Instead, we got the generic rock music that we can't quite place. But now it's kind of become our thing. But that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking like, why didn't we really kind of do a deep dive and get like the highlight music? Because I remember on NFL primetime back in the day, I mean, the music is actually part of it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that music.
Da da dun da 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 dun 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 da da dun 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 dun, like something like that, And the funny thing is, people identify it with football.
Yes,
that's kind of the key part of it as well. Anyway, and even like a lot of NFL films pieces had production library music. It wasn't all the late Sam Spence compositions, and now they have their own original people. But they dig into the library. You watch some Super Bowl highlight films, and there are production library tunes that to this day you can download for a relatively nominal fee.
A relatively nominal fee. My choices here in the dashboard are rock, acoustic cinematic, dance pop, daydreaming, feeding the ducks, into space, lo-fi, and night driving.
I wonder what feeding the ducks entails. That's like something like peaceful, whimsical. You're sitting out by the lake on a pastoral spring or summer day, and that was not what I was thinking for feeding the duck.
Yeah, I don't think about this when I think feeding the ducks.
Yeah, maybe it's like they call a drum machine a duck or something like that. I don't know.
Oh, it is Orange and Blue today, presented by Sean Honda. We are slappies. But it's Monday, and I'm just over the moon because I got to see rookie minicamp on Saturday. We got a ton to get to. We'll be breaking it down for you all this week right here on this show, Orange and Blue today, presented by Sean Honda, Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason, and talking about, I remember years ago, Mace, Josh McDaniels would always bring up the Patriots way, and I would say, forget the Patriots way. There's another F word I wanted to use, but I'd say, forget the Patriots way. We need the Broncos way. Well, now the Broncos way is the Peyton way. You wrote about it at denversports.com. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's little things and big things. It's all the accumulation of stuff that we've seen over the last few months. But let's just view it in terms of this weekend. The locker room was open. The locker room had not been open for rookie minicamp before. It was get a few guys at the podium on the side of the field, and that was it. Why was the locker room open? Well, as Sean Payton explained it, it was because a lot of these guys coming from the college ranks don't know what that's like when media is in the locker room. And so that was part of the rookie minicamp education of these guys, was actually having media in there for the first time. The stretching was different. Of course, Bo Lowry coming over from New Orleans, he's supervising the training, the conditioning, the nutrition, etc. We saw, little like spider crawls almost that we saw
bear
early
crawl,
on.
bear walking. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that's different. Another example of him putting his imprint. 7-on-7 back was gone last year, back this year, So again, Sean Payton, and that him establishing that it's going to be his way. And then it was a small aesthetic thing, but it was something. If we look at our traffic and our Facebook numbers, got a lot of play from people reading and commenting on it.
It's the first thing you texted me on Saturday.
Yes.
You said, wait a second, what?
No logos on the helmets. And I did a dive back into the archives. I believe you have to go back to the Dan Reeves era for the last time the Broncos didn't have logos on their helmets for practice, whether it was off-season or training camp. Mike Shanahan, Josh McDaniels, John Fox, Gary Kubiak, Vance Joseph, Vic Fangio, Nathaniel Hackett, Wade Phillips going way back. All of them had the logos on the helmets for all the work, but not this team. And this is what the Saints do. I mean, I just to confirm it, I did a little searching. Wasn't hard to find a lot of New Orleans Saints shots year in and year out from off-season practice, early part of training camp without the logo. The funny thing is Sean Payton didn't really have a reason for it. He said it's not about earning the logo. But at the same time, it's one of those things that because it's different around here, it has some level of significance in terms of what it symbolizes. To me, it's not about earning the logo. It's that in every way, big and small, this is Sean Payton's team. And on the football side, it's Sean Payton's organization. He's even changing up the travel because, as he mentioned, when they have a night game back east, they're not going to take that overnight flight home that would usually leave at about 2:30 in the morning Eastern time, get you back to Denver about what, like 4 o'clock in the morning, 3:30 in the morning Colorado time. Nope. Said after that game, they're going to go back to the hotel and then fly the next day, there's a cost obviously associated with that because that's another night in the hotel that the team is paying for. But of course, these are the types of things where money is no object. So he says, I want to stay a little extra so my guys aren't, bleary-eyed the next day and they're not completely disheveled and off kilter schedule-wise because they took a red-eye flight. That's something that I'm going to do. It was just fascinating to me how, from what we saw and then what we heard from Sean Payton after, how much is different for the Broncos. The question is it going to add up to more success? I think there are a lot of factors that are more important, namely getting Russell Wilson back to where he was in Seattle. But all of this shows who's in charge, who's setting the tone, and that is Sean Payton. The Broncos haven't had this kind of imperial coach probably since Mike Shanahan.
Yes, and there's an old saying in the NFL, Mace, I know that you know it. Every team takes on the personality of either their head coach or their quarterback. It's the personality of Sean Payton, and the name's on the front of the helmet. So one of the things Sean Payton said in that diatribe about no logos on the helmets, where he said a bunch of nothing, but he also said some stuff that was very interesting. If you're here, you can make it. I was going to ask him about Marcus Colston. He brought up when they got Pierre Thomas undrafted, and they actually drafted Antonio Pittman. He didn't use Antonio's name. He just said running back at Ohio State. And I was like, was that Antonio Pittman? It was Antonio Pittman. They got Pierre Thomas undrafted. And listen, you can play. I wanted to ask him about Marcus Colston, one, because I could get a Shrine Bowl reference in, but two, because that was a 7th-round pick out of Hofstra that went on to become a perennial Pro Bowler. And the nice thing is, he said, this is what you are. We're here. We're the same team, and that's the name on your helmet. That's how when we watch film, we're going to see you and that name. You can make a name for yourself, and it all started on Saturday.
Yeah, now the other reason for that is they're learning the names of the players as well. Because the first year John Fox was the head coach, it was the lockout year, 20 players in for the offseason because of said lockout. And as a result, when the team came back to the facility and began their work, they put the names on the front of it. I think, even though it wasn't mentioned, there's a function there to the last names on the front of the helmet, as in, we're trying to learn who you are. But I think on another level, having that story about Antonio Pittman and Pierre Thomas, even though I wonder if he didn't mention Pittman's name out of courtesy or just because he didn't remember him, because Pittman didn't stick and Pierre Thomas. I mean, you coach long enough, you can't recall every the late Dean Smith back in the day, or Sean McVay today. And not every coach can do that. But I think what he's saying is, hey, I mean, we're going to see it. You can make a name for yourself. And we often say that.
Okay. Mace, hold on just a second. You can see me behind the scenes, Mace. Just check your internet because it got a little laggy there as people saying, Mace entered the Matrix. That's what RJ was saying. So, Mace, just give me the thumbs up. I can see you on the bottom of my screen. Give me the thumbs up when you feel like you're ready to jump back in. It is Orange and Blue today, presented by Champ Honda. It's a live show, ladies and gentlemen, so this is what we do. But I like what Mace was saying about the Peyton way, because it's setting and establishing that culture, establishing that standard. This is what this team is going to be, because that's the way Sean Payton wants them to be. It will lead to wins, whether that's 2023 or 2024. That's what we have yet to determine. But the culture clearly is established with Sean Payton in the way that they do things, the way that the rookies are set up to do things, and the way that we see Sean Payton run his camp. It got me incredibly excited. And again, Mace, just give me the thumbs up on the screen at the bottom when you're ready. So looks like that's a thumbs up, right? Is that a thumbs up? That's close enough to a thumbs up.
I didn't even know anything was wrong.
Yeah, usually StreamYard will ride through it, but we got it a little too choppy there. But either way, I love the fact that Sean Payton it's not about draft picks, although we're going to get to their draft picks. It's just about who can play, and finding those players that can play. That's Sean Payton's job now.
Exactly. Now, the thing is, how much of an advantage do the guys they bring in this year have over the guys that are inherited, right?
I think a big advantage.
I'll give you an example. You have two undrafted edge rushers brought in the last 2 years. Christopher Allen spent last year on IR. Thomas Incoom is the guy they're bringing in this year out of Central Michigan. Who has the edge? If you looked at them on paper, you'd say, okay, they're pretty close to equal. Allen maybe even has a slight edge wing if he's healthy, because you're still concerned about the foot injury that he had that kept him on IR last year and that caused him to miss all but one game as a senior at Alabama. But Allen's the guy that came in last year, previous coaching regime, brought in by George Payton. And now you have Incoom, who is someone that's coming into the Sean Payton regime. And so while I think there's merit to that, I still do think the players that are brought in now have an advantage. I mean, let's talk about number 3 quarterback, for example, right?
Yeah.
They bring in Ben DiNucci, who was in the XFL this spring. Now, as of the moment we're doing this, Jarrett Garantano is still on the team, right?
So I'm in the locker room.
Yes. Jarrett Garantano is still here. Who has the advantage in the battle for number 3? I'd have to go with Ben DiNucci, because he's the guy that came in as part of this stewardship rather than being inherited. And if they were really happy with Jarrett Garantano, would you need to bring in Ben DiNucci?
No.
Yeah. I mean, I like the move. It's a small back end move, unlikely to have much of an impact, but I like the move because you should be always looking to upgrade every position. It's why I sat here on this show last December and waxed poetic about how the Broncos should claim Baker Mayfield off waivers when Carolina let him go. Why should you not be trying to improve every spot on the roster?
And you did that in a non-hot takey way, because both of us don't like hot takes. You suggested Mayfield because it makes football sense.
Yes. You should always be looking to improve every spot on the roster. Always be chasing, always be looking, always be closing, as they said in Glengarry Glen Ross, right? I mean, what we need a Alec Baldwin saying, put that coffee down. Yes. You got your tea. I like it.
Coffee's for closers.
Yes, exactly. Coffee's for closers only. Sean Payton's a closer, but Sean Payton is also somebody who will go under any rock. That's why you had 3 XFL players there this weekend, 2 of them getting contracts out of the weekend's work. You're going to look everywhere for players, and you should be looking to upgrade every spot. One thing that I would not be surprised at all to see this season as it goes on, I would not be shocked to see the Broncos having a pretty thorough and consistent churn on their practice squad and even the back end of the roster to continue getting looks at players. Maybe the Broncos are a team that is very active in terms of waiver claims. They'll have a pretty high position, number 5 claim at the start of the season at the final cut down to 53 players. Don't be surprised to see the Broncos take advantage of that waiver claim spot to make some moves on the back end of the roster, because you're always looking to upgrade. And if this roster were good enough, we wouldn't be talking about a new coach, new regime, all this new stuff being brought in.
RJ has a great one that I know you'll appreciate as the big Seinfeld guy. All Peyton has to do is the opposite, like George Costanza. Broncos will go 12-5.
Hey, it'd be awesome if they did. I mean, I honestly think 12-5 is probably a bit out of this team's reach this year. I think they could go 12-5 if they were in the NFC. I don't see 12-5 in the AFC West. Location's going to matter. But I would view 10-7 as an incredibly successful season.
Right.
And you know what? And it's, even though it may not be the opposite record, as RJ suggests, you might get there by doing the opposite. You were lousy on special teams last year. You were losing games in that phase. Well, this year you make yourself refined, effective, and you win some games there at the margins in that phase. You were sloppy on offense, giving the ball away. Well, clean that up. You had no core identity on offense last year. You figure out the core concepts and play to them this year. It's very true. A lot of the opposite.
Orange and Blue today, presented by Sean Honda, Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason. And we'll get into what the players did at rookie minicamp all throughout the week. But the first tweet that I sent was, everyone's going to love Drew Sanders when you see him play. And I think it was the first or second play, he overran it. Because he's on point. Like, he scrapes and flows. He finds a play. He overran the first play. But after that, every single play, he was around the football as a run defender. And coverage, he was covering more running backs. I don't want to give too much away. I didn't see him go against a tight end and turn his hips to cover. And that's my number one question with Drew Sanders. It's the number one question you or I get on Twitter from fans. Like, can Drew Sanders cover? Well, he had a pick 6. That was on a running back on a swing route, basically, where he baited Ben DiNucci, who's got a little gunslinger in him. But Drew Sanders looks like a football playing Jesse, no doubt, backing up what we saw on film, Mace. And there's nothing more reassuring, whether it's the all-star games we go to or whether these practices that we attend. When a guy backs up what we see on film, you can breathe that sigh of relief and say, okay, what I saw was true. That's how he plays.
Now, I mean, we can't obviously get into the details of it. The question now is, how do you get that guy on the field, and does it become more as an edge or an inside linebacker? And that's the huge question. They did cut Jacob Martin, of course, last week, and Sean Payton did say, well, maybe Martin could be brought back. The contract certainly was working against him, but what is Sanders' path to playing time? Even though he's officially an inside linebacker, the clearest path to playing time may be working on the outside. And yeah, you can drop into coverage there as well. So it's going to be fascinating to see what they throw at him. Do they say, okay, we want you to get one position down well, or is it better for you to get on the field to have you doing multiple things? That's the question I think they're going to have to answer over the next few weeks. But if they are flexible and if he can learn fast enough, There's a path to him working into the rotation at edge right away.
Yeah, there is a path for Drew Sanders to play more significant snaps than people think. And again, we'll continue on through everything that he did as the week goes on. We got a ton to get to. So paring that down, Mace, I want to bring up the Javonte Williams thing with about 10 minutes left, because I think the conversation on Javonte is, one, fascinating, and two, really, really thick. Do you believe Sean Payton? And I love Jeff Legwold. You love Leggy. Leggy went with a follow-up, because Sean Payton got into his coach answer mode where he's just like, I'm going to say a bunch of nothing. And Leggy pinned him down. Not training camp. Will Javonte Williams be ready for training camp? That wasn't the question. Will he be ready for the beginning of training camp, the opening of training camp? Legwold pushed for it. He got the answer. And the answer was, I hope so. So do you believe Sean Payton, a guy who would regularly talk about Michael Thomas doing all these great things in practice, for Michael Thomas to play 3 games in 10 years? So, Javonte, maybe the biggest news story that we got out of rookie minicamp on Saturday was the post-practice presser, say that 3 times fast, where it was revealed that Javonte Williams could be ready for the start of training camp. Mace, I have difficulty believing that.
Yeah, and you know what? Could is a dangerous word, right? The other thing is, what reason do you have to rush him back?
0.
Exactly. If you want to get the most out of him, you've got to make sure that he's all the way there. And there are 3 elements to this injury. It's not just the ACL. And because of that, first of all, you have to expect that even when he's back, he's going to be at about 90%. I saw something this morning from a doctor. It was on Twitter. I'd have to find the tweet, but it was a sports medicine expert, and said that since 2011, you look at running backs who tore ACLs, and only a couple immediately got back to where they were, and neither of them had the extent that Javonte Williams had with the injury involving multiple ligaments. So I get the optimism. But I think Sean Payton, about the players that he has, like you mentioned Michael Thomas. Look at him talking about Jarrett Stidham as someone that he thinks has a possibility to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think sometimes when he's going through that, I think he's setting high bar goals, but at the same time, you have to be reasonable in reality. I think it'd be perfectly fine if Javonte starts camp on the PUP list. I think it would be okay if Javonte even goes into the regular season on the PUP list and you wait on him playing until late October.
I think with Javonte Williams, and you mentioned, is he at 90% when he returns? Mm-hmm. And I love Pookie. He might not be any good at 90% because his game's not on speed. This isn't Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson was a freak who could come back from a knee injury, just an ACL, in 8 months because he's a freak. Javonte's never been a freak. He's not this explosive, like he's powerful after contact, but he invites contact. He doesn't necessarily look to avoid contact, and he's not really fast. So the way his game is built, Mace, it makes me concerned if you're at 90% Javonte and people are saying, what's wrong with Javonte? He's averaging 3.2 yards a carry. That's not Javonte. Javonte needs to be closer to 100%, whatever that number is, to truly be the effective starter in this league. That's my opinion as someone who loves him and had him as his number 1 running back over Najee Harris when he came out.
Yeah, and the thing is, the speed means he doesn't really have much to spare, right?
Right.
Where have we heard that before, with a player who's very effective but didn't really have that 10th of a second to spare? It's the guy wearing number 14.
Cortland Sutton.
Yep. Different position, but similar in the need for explosiveness. So I don't think they rushed Cortland Sutton back, but at the same time, if you don't have that gear to spare, then it becomes problematic. I guess the way I would describe myself on Javonte is hopeful. Jose says if he's not 100%, he's going to look like Trent Richardson. I mean, I hate to use that name. I mean, that's a radioactive name to bring up based on how he didn't live up to his draft potential, but I can kind of see it as far as a power back who wasn't the fastest in the world and lacked that explosiveness. So I think everybody needs to slow the roll on Javonte Williams right now and hope for the best, but don't go in relying upon him being at 100% if this season is to work out. You need to make sure Samaje Perine's good to go. And we're going to get into at least one rookie running back later on this week as we dive into more of the players who stood out at rookie minicamp. But I think you gotta take it easy on the roll for Javonte Williams here.
Yeah, I don't think anyone needs to put any sort of undue pressure on him. So my question to you then, Mace, becomes, why does Peyton do that? Why does he give that and I understand in football, and boy, we could really get deep into this one because there were reports about even Lamar Jackson last year. Like Lamar probably could have played, but because of his contract situation, he didn't play, and the Ravens were upset about that. Now they've kissed and made up. But this happens all the time. A team, and even team doctors will say, you can play, and a player's like, I don't think I can play. Now, I'm on the side of Lamar, and obviously it'd be on the side of the player and Javonte if Javonte says he can't play. But why put that out there? Why put that unspoken pressure? But no doubt pressure. Like, oh, we think he can be ready for the start of training camp. Well, how about we just wait and see? That would have been a perfectly acceptable answer.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, oftentimes it's the player that's putting pressure on themselves, right?
Yes.
I mean, like last year, back in December, Russell Wilson wanted to play against Arizona, thought he could play, and the Broncos, I think wisely, told him, no. Yeah, you had a concussion. No, we're not going to rush you back. I think part of it is the nature of the sport. I think there's even a little paranoia involved with it. Because think of it this way. If you're Javonte Williams, the clock moves really fast. We're talking about year 3 of his rookie deal already. So terrific, promising year in year 1. Year 2 wiped out because of an injury. You're thinking, I got to get back on the field and show what I can do before I get to my contract year. And the sooner that I can get out there and get past this, the better it's going to be in the contract year. But here's the thing. If you go out there before you're ready, if the team puts you out there, whether it's the team or your own internal pressure, and you go out there before you're ready to go and you're not effective, you know what happens? They replace you the following offseason. And the best thing for Javonte is to not get back out there until he's ready. Even if that's mid-season, fine and dandy, okay? Because if he doesn't get back out there, let's even push it to November, right? Let's say after the bye. Javonte Williams,
week 9.
Yeah, comes back for the Buffalo game in week 10, right? Comes back then. If he plays well for the final for the second half of the season, the final 9 games of the season, you know what everyone's saying? He's the guy. He's ready to go. If you rush him back out there, he's not altogether ready, and he puts some bad film out there, film that doesn't look like the Javonte that you know from his rookie season, you expect him to be, then you're looking at the end of the season and saying, wow, 3.4 yards a carry. Yeah, running back's one of our top needs going in the draft, and then you get replaced and move on. So it's one of those things where the paranoia to get you back out there may work against you in terms of the best thing for your career. So I hope he's patient. I hope the Broncos are patient, and just be careful. Let's, I hate to use a war analogy when talking about football, but you're focused on the war, not the battle. The long term. That's where you should be focused on in the long term of getting Javonte right.
Even at a running back position where the careers are like 3 years and you're always a young man's position, because if he doesn't do well this year, they're looking to replace him. They're looking to draft somebody else or bring in a free agent or whatever. It just creates problems. And we don't have to name names, Mace. We can name names off the air. We could have fun doing that. But like, you and I know plenty of lazy players. You and I know plenty of players that, hey, they probably could have played, but they didn't play. Whatever. I'm usually on the player side, but just to honestly, it's human nature. Like, we know some players that maybe take a little extra time to get healthy. We call them 100%ers. right?
Mhm.
Or is he 100%? He's got to feel 100% to play. Like most of these football players, like 70% at best. But Javonte is not one of those guys. We know that with Javonte already. In year 3, he's not a 100%er. He will go out there. He will battle. He will fight through injury. And I don't want him to put more pressure on himself.
Yeah. And if you put too much pressure on yourself, it's going to lead to mistakes and a lack of production. I mean, you know, a name that maybe the Broncos fans aren't going to want to hear, but a guy who wasn't a 100%er who would go out there at a lesser percentage was Melvin Gordon. And I think sometimes that didn't do him any favors over the course of his career, especially this past year in Denver. He was not 100% going out there. He went out there anyway, felt like the team needed him, especially after Javonte got hurt and ended up hurting his cause, although he got a ring at the end. So weirdly, it all worked out. But here we are in May and nobody signed him. So therein lies one of the consequences of maybe pushing yourself back out there before you're all the way ready.
Orange and Blue today, presented by Champ Honda. And oh boy, we got a lot big shows planned for you all this week. He is Andrew Mason. You follow him on Twitter. He is at Mace Denver. And I am at Cecil Lammey. We certainly do appreciate each and every one of you. Until next time, be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned, and please, would you, stay frosty.